Fear is the invisible chain that binds men. It keeps nations obedient. It keeps the ambitious small. It keeps the strong from becoming powerful. Machiavelli understood this better than most because he lived in a time when fear meant survival. To him, fear was not just an emotion. It was a weapon, a political tool, a battlefield strategy. But he also saw its dangers. The man ruled by fear is a slave. The ruler who fears too much is doomed. The man who masters fear, however, becomes untouchable. Today we will uncover Machiavelli's ruthless lessons on how to eliminate fear from your mind, how to wield it over others, and how to ensure that fear never again holds you hostage. By the end of this video, you will not only see fear differently, you will see yourself differently. 1. Fear exists only in anticipation. Machiavelli understood something most men never realize. It is not the blow itself that breaks us, but the imagination of the blow before it even lands. Men are not destroyed by reality. They are destroyed by their endless rehearsal of possible tragedies. A merchant who fears losing his fortune is already impoverished in spirit long before he has lost a single coin. He spends sleepless nights inventing disasters, watching the walls of his security collapse in his mind until he can no longer enjoy the wealth he still possesses. A general, likewise, who dreads defeat before the first arrow is even loosed, becomes hesitant, indecisive, and weak. In this hesitation lies the very seed of his ruin. He does not fall because the enemy is stronger. He falls because fear robbed him of clarity and courage before the battle even began. Fear is therefore not a force that strikes from the outside. It is a ghost that lives within, haunting you in advance. The storm you imagine in your mind is always greater, darker, and more terrifying than the reality you eventually face. Think of your past fears. How many sleepless nights did you endure over things that never even happened? How often did the event, when it finally arrived, prove smaller and less catastrophic than the nightmare your imagination had painted? This is the truth Machiavelli pressed upon those who sought power. It is not reality that crushes men. It is the anticipation of reality. Fear does not wait for the actual moment. It consumes you before the battle, before the loss, before the hardship has even occurred. If you wish to walk free of fear, you must learn to distinguish between what is real and what is phantom. The event may hurt you, yes. It may bring pain, loss, or hardship, but that pain is finite, bound to the moment it occurs. Fear, on the other hand, is infinite, multiplying suffering endlessly in your imagination. The man who learns to silence anticipation and face reality directly will always be stronger than the man who trembles at ghosts. Remember this law. Anticipation is where fear grows, but action is where fear dies. When you step forward, when you confront the situation, when you strike boldly into the unknown, you discover that fear evaporates like mist before the sun. 2. Fortune belongs to the bold, not the fearful. Machiavelli's most striking observation in The Prince is that fortune is like a woman. It bends to the will of the bold, not the hesitant. Life does not wait for those who linger. Fortune does not smile on the cautious planner who endlessly weighs every possibility, hoping to act only when the stars align. Instead, it yields to the one who storms forward, who seizes the moment, who forces destiny into his hands. Fear, however, is the great thief of opportunity. It whispers insidiously, "Wait until the time is right. Secure more allies. Gather more evidence. Avoid the risk." But the right moment never arrives because the fearful man is always waiting for the conditions that will never exist.
He drowns in preparation, while the bold man is already commanding armies, ruling cities, and shaping his future. Machiavelli saw this pattern again and again in the rise and fall of rulers. Those who dared, even recklessly, often gained power because boldness creates its own momentum. It shocks rivals into hesitation, it inspires followers to rally, and it forces opportunities to appear where none seem to exist. The timid man, meanwhile, gives away his power before the contest is even begun. By delaying, he allows his rivals to act first. By hesitating, he reveals weakness. By waiting for certainty, he is left behind by those who had the courage to act amid uncertainty. Boldness, therefore, is not just a trait, it is a weapon. It turns chaos into advantage and transforms risk into reward. To rid yourself of fear, you must reframe your relationship with risk. Understand this: every hesitation is a gift you hand to your enemy. Every moment you wait, you yield the initiative to someone bolder than you. And in politics, in business, in war, and in life itself, initiative is everything. The one who moves first defines the rules, and the one who follows is already at a disadvantage. Do not mistake fortune for kindness. Fortune is ruthless. It favors the daring, because the daring do not wait to be chosen. They seize what they want. If you want to live free of fear, you must embrace boldness not as a strategy to be used sometimes, but as a way of life. Fear makes you cautious, and caution makes you small. Boldness, even when imperfect, forces doors open that timidity will never even approach. Fortune does not belong to the fearful. It belongs only to the bold. 3. Fear is the root of weakness. What truly makes a man weak? It is rarely a lack of strength, talent, or intelligence. History is full of men who began with nothing, no wealth, no armies, no status, yet rose to greatness through boldness and will. Weakness, Machiavelli observed, is not born from poverty or misfortune. It is born from fear. Fear of losing what little one has, fear of standing alone without allies, fear of confronting rivals and enemies head-on. This inner trembling corrodes the will before any external enemy even has the chance to strike. Fear disarms a man from within. It whispers hesitation into his heart, and hesitation always leads to ruin. Machiavelli despised indecision because he knew it was the offspring of fear. A prince who fears betrayal never acts with confidence, and in his constant suspicion, he paralyzes himself, making betrayal more likely. A soldier who fears death loses the battle before the first arrow flies. His courage dies in advance, and with it, his usefulness to the cause. Fear makes a man hesitate where he should move, retreat where he should advance, and compromise where he should stand firm. And every hesitation, every retreat, every compromise becomes a crack in his armor. Weakness is not an accident of fate. It is manufactured by fear, allowed to spread like rot through the soul. If you would be untouchable, you must confront the root of fear directly. You must look at the things men dread most: death, rejection, humiliation, failure, and strip them of the illusions that make them powerful. What is death but the end that comes for all, whether you tremble before it or not? What is rejection but proof that you dared to demand something from life? What is failure but an opportunity to begin again, stronger and wiser? These are not chains unless you allow them to bind you. The truth Machiavelli understood is that strength is not the absence of pain or danger, but the refusal to bow before them. Courage is forged in defiance, and the man who chooses defiance over fear becomes unbreakable. 4. Fear others, but never yourself. Machiavelli taught that fear is the most reliable tool of control. Love is fragile. People can adore you today and despise you tomorrow. Gratitude fades. Loyalty bends under pressure, but fear endures. It creates boundaries, restrains impulses, and forces obedience. A ruler who inspires fear can maintain order even among the treacherous, because people will not risk disobedience when they know the punishment is certain. This is why Machiavelli insisted that a wise prince should not strive to be loved above all else, but feared enough that no one dares to cross him. Fear in others keeps power stable. It makes betrayal costly and rebellion unthinkable. But here lies the danger. While you must cultivate fear outwardly, you must never let fear rule inwardly. The man who is ruled by his own fear is already defeated. A ruler who fears conspiracies behind every door becomes paranoid, and paranoia breeds rash, self-destructive actions. He lashes out not from strength, but from insecurity, and in doing so, he confirms the weakness he hoped to conceal. A man who fears invisible enemies spends his life chasing shadows, exhausting himself against threats that may never exist. Such a ruler collapses under the weight of his own imagined dangers, destroyed not by his enemies, but by his own trembling heart.
The key, then, is separation. Fear must be something you wield, not something you feel. Outwardly, instill enough fear to command respect and compliance. Inwardly, cultivate calmness and boldness so that nothing shakes your composure. A leader who is fearless inside but feared outside is unassailable. His enemies hesitate to strike, while he himself is unmoved by danger. This dual mastery makes a man untouchable. You must therefore invert the natural order. Fear others so they stay within your boundaries, but fear nothing within yourself. Let fear be the leash you hold in your hand, never the chain around your neck. 5. Pain is real, but fear is illusion. Machiavelli was no dreamer. He lived in an age of assassinations, plagues, and wars. He saw firsthand the brutality of life, soldiers cut down in battle, rulers poisoned by rivals, families destroyed by fortune's cruelty. He understood that pain is inevitable. It is woven into existence. You cannot escape loss. You cannot escape hardship. You cannot escape suffering. Pain is part of the contract of life itself. But fear is something different. Fear is not an external reality, but an internal invention. It is the mind tormenting itself with images of what might be, long before anything has actually occurred. Pain strikes once, but fear makes you suffer 1,000 times in advance. The Stoics, whose wisdom often walked hand in hand with Machiavelli's, taught that pain is limited, but fear is limitless. A man who fears pain suffers more in his imagination than he will ever suffer in reality. He lives in chains before the punishment has even come. Consider a soldier waiting for battle. His stomach turns, his hands shake, his mind imagines death again and again. Yet when the battle arrives, the clash is fast, brutal, and often survivable. The fear beforehand was longer, sharper, and more destructive than the reality itself. Most men are not broken by pain. They are broken by the fear of pain, by the shadows they conjured in their own minds. If you wish to be untouchable, you must make this distinction clear. Pain is real, but fear is illusion. You cannot avoid pain, but you can destroy fear by exposing it for what it is, a ghost, a story, a trick of the imagination. When you embrace this truth, you become powerful beyond measure. Loss no longer terrifies you because you see it as part of life's rhythm. Hardship no longer paralyzes you because you know it can be endured. Death itself loses its fangs because you accept it as the inevitable end of all men. Pain may still strike you, but it cannot chain you. Fear, however, only exists if you feed it. The day you stop feeding it is the day you become free.
6. Fear dies in discipline. Machiavelli observed that fear thrives in the minds of men who lack structure, men who drift aimlessly, carried by emotion, impulse, and circumstance. The undisciplined man is a perfect host for fear, because his life is governed not by principle, but by reaction. He waits to see what the world throws at him, and in that waiting, anxiety festers. His lack of preparation makes every obstacle seem larger than it truly is, every challenge more daunting, every uncertainty more terrifying. He does not command his life, he is commanded by it. Fear rules him because he has not mastered himself. Great leaders, Machiavelli noted, always carried discipline like armor. They imposed order upon themselves first, before expecting order from others. A general whose soldiers are undisciplined will fear the enemy, for he knows his army will scatter when the test comes. But a general whose men are trained, hardened, and bound by strict order walks calmly into war, because discipline has already killed fear within their ranks. The same is true for the individual. A man who lives with self-discipline, rising early, maintaining his body, sharpening his mind, controlling his appetites, develops a strength that fear cannot penetrate. He is not shaken by every shift of fortune because he has already prepared himself to endure discomfort, hardship, and loss. Fear withers under the weight of discipline. A structured mind does not panic in uncertainty. It simply adapts and moves forward. A disciplined body does not tremble before hardship. It endures. A man who has trained himself to act decisively does not hesitate in the face of opportunity. He seizes it. To kill fear, you must not hope for courage to appear in the moment. You must build it daily, piece by piece, through discipline. Every small act of control, every habit of order, every sacrifice of comfort is a weapon forged against fear. When the great test comes, the disciplined man is calm, while the undisciplined is paralyzed. Discipline, then, is not merely a virtue, it is the death of fear. 7. Fear of death is the last illusion. At the root of every fear lies one final unspoken terror, the fear of death. Strip away the layers and you will see it. The fear of poverty is the fear of dying hungry. The fear of rejection is the fear of being cast out, left alone to perish. The fear of pain is the fear of suffering until death arrives. Death is the shadow behind every other fear. And Machiavelli, living in a world ravaged by plague, war, and assassination, knew this truth better than most. He saw rulers cling desperately to power, not because they loved ruling, but because they feared the end that would come once they lost it. He saw men betray their honor, surrender their freedom, and even destroy their own families in a futile attempt to extend their lives. Yet death came for them all the same.
This is why Machiavelli understood the wisdom of the ancients, who taught that death is not to be feared. For what is death but the natural end? It is not an enemy you can defeat, nor a fate you can bargain away. It does not discriminate between king and beggar, soldier and coward, genius and fool. And yet, most men live as if by trembling and clinging they can outlast it. But in doing so, they destroy their lives before death even touches them. A man terrified of death never lives fully. He clutches at safety, at routine, at small comforts, all the while shrinking his existence into a cage of fear. He tries to save his life, but in truth, he loses it long before the grave. The man who accepts death, however, becomes untouchable. What can you threaten him with if he no longer fears the end? He does not bargain with his enemies, he does not beg for mercy, and he does not compromise his honor in exchange for a few more fragile years. He walks through life with a calm boldness, because he knows the worst that can happen is the same fate awaiting every man. This acceptance strips death of its sting, and with it, it strips every other fear of its power. Once you have looked death in the face and said, "Come when you will, I am ready," no loss, no rejection, no failure can ever control you again. To conquer the fear of death is to conquer the last illusion, and to live with a freedom that no one can take away. 8. Fear is a tool. Use it on others. Machiavelli's brilliance was not only in teaching men how to free themselves from fear, but also in showing how fear could be transformed into a weapon of power. He observed that love, though pleasant, is fragile. It depends on moods, on gratitude, on feelings that shift like the wind. A ruler who relies solely on love is at the mercy of fickle affections. One hardship, one unpopular decision, one whisper from a rival, and the people's love can turn into hatred overnight. Fear, on the other hand, is stable. It is grounded not in affection, but in calculation. A man may choose to betray love, but he will think twice before defying fear, because the cost is too high. Fear makes rebellion expensive, disobedience dangerous, and betrayal unthinkable. Yet Machiavelli warned that the use of fear is an art. A ruler who wields it recklessly, who inflicts cruelty without measure, crosses a dangerous line. Excessive fear does not produce loyalty, it breeds hatred. And hatred, unlike fear, is combustible. It pushes men to conspire, to risk death, to strike back no matter the cost. The wise ruler understands this. He uses fear with precision, not indulgence. He punishes swiftly, decisively, and only when it reinforces his authority. He ensures that his subjects and enemies alike know the consequences of crossing him, but he does not drown them in cruelty. Like the edge of a blade, fear must be sharp, not blunted through overuse.
Applied with wisdom, fear becomes the most reliable instrument of stability. Soldiers march into impossible battles not out of love for their commander, but because they fear the punishment for retreating. Subjects pay their taxes not out of devotion, but out of fear of retribution. Even allies remain loyal, often not because they admire you, but because they fear what might happen if they betray you. To be fearless within and to inspire fear without, that is the highest mastery of power. Machiavelli's lesson is clear. Eliminate fear in yourself, but never hesitate to sow it in others when order, stability, or dominance demands it. Fear is not only an obstacle to overcome, it is also a tool to be wielded. 9. Fear cannot touch the prepared mind. Machiavelli often warned that fear is strongest where preparation is weakest. An army that has not trained dreads the enemy's approach. A ruler who ignores unrest in his city lies awake at night imagining conspiracies in every corner. A man who has wasted his time in comfort trembles the moment hardship knocks on his door. Fear flourishes in the soil of unpreparedness. It grows where discipline and foresight are absent. But when the mind is prepared, when the body is trained, when the will has been sharpened against adversity, fear loses its grip. For the prepared man has already rehearsed the battle in his mind, already calculated the worst, and already accepted the price of struggle. Preparation transforms fear into calm. Consider the commander who knows his defenses are strong, his men disciplined, and his provisions secure. When the enemy advances, he does not panic, he simply executes the plan. Compare this to the unprepared leader, scrambling at the last moment, drowning in panic because he knows he has neglected what mattered. The difference between courage and cowardice is often nothing more than preparation. Machiavelli understood that fortune favors the bold, but boldness itself is built on readiness. The man who prepares is free to act decisively, while the man who has neglected his duties is paralyzed by uncertainty. This principle applies beyond rulers and generals. It applies to every man who wishes to live without fear. If you are prepared for hardship, it cannot break you. If you have trained your body, illness will not terrify you. If you have hardened your mind, failure will not devastate you.
If you have accepted death, then nothing else in life can frighten you. Preparation is the fortress that protects the mind from being overrun by fear. The unprepared man trembles at every possibility because every possibility threatens to undo him. But the prepared man walks calmly, knowing that whatever comes, he has already faced it in thought, already built the strength to endure it, and already resolved to move forward regardless of outcome. Fear cannot touch the man who is ready.
10. Live so boldly that fear becomes irrelevant. Machiavelli's final lesson is the most powerful of all. Fear disappears not through avoidance, not through careful calculation alone, but through the sheer force of bold, unrelenting action. The timid man waits, hesitates, and dies many times in his imagination before the real battle even arrives. The bold man moves, acts, and embraces life in all its chaos, knowing that risk is unavoidable, loss is inevitable, and pain is part of the journey. Boldness is not reckless bravado. It is the refusal to let fear dictate the terms of your life. It is the deliberate choice to confront reality head-on, even when the outcome is uncertain. To live boldly is to claim power over fear itself. Machiavelli observed that fortune, chaos, and human ambition always test man. Those who shrink from these tests allow fear to define them. Those who step forward, even into danger, redefine the rules of engagement. Boldness forces opportunity to appear where hesitation sees none. A man who acts decisively, even when the odds are against him, creates momentum. He shapes reality rather than being shaped by it. Boldness silences doubt, overwhelms hesitation, and annihilates the imaginary barriers that fear builds. Every daring action is a blow struck against the tyranny of fear. Every calculated risk a declaration that you will no longer be its prisoner. To live so boldly is to render fear irrelevant. When a man has acted without hesitation, embraced the possibility of failure, and stared down danger with deliberate resolve, fear loses its power over him. He does not wait for permission from circumstance or fortune. He does not seek reassurance from others. He does not allow imagined threats to control his choices. Fear cannot touch the one who moves with purpose, courage, and audacity. Machiavelli's message is clear. The man who masters boldness is untouchable. Fear becomes meaningless because he has already confronted life in all its uncertainty and declared with every action that he will not bow to it. To live boldly is to live free, and in that freedom, fear becomes irrelevant, powerless, and forever defeated. Machiavelli's world was ruthless, filled with betrayal, blood, and chaos. Yet his wisdom endures because it touches a timeless truth. Fear is the greatest enemy of power and the greatest chain on the human mind. If you wish to be untouchable, if you wish to walk through life without being ruled by hesitation, you must destroy fear within yourself. See it for what it is, an illusion, a shadow, a ghost. Replace it with boldness, discipline, and ruthless acceptance of reality. And then, like Machiavelli's ideal ruler, let fear be something you command in others, never something that commands you. From this day forward, let fear never touch you again. If you found this video powerful, like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss lessons in power, discipline, and fearlessness. Share this video with someone who needs to break free from fear today.